For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk that I offer with Mr. Polis.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. McClintock of California. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available in this act to the Department of Justice may be used with respect to any of the states of Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut,
Mr.
Delaware,
Chairman,
Florida.
ask unanimous consent that the amendment.
Without objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 287, the gentleman from California and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself 2 minutes.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment is not an endorsement of marijuana. I've never used it. My wife and I raised our children never to use it, and I believe that local schools ought to assure that every American is aware of the risks and dangers that it may pose. This amendment addresses a much larger question: whether the federal government has the constitutional authority to dictate a policy to states on matters that occur strictly within their own borders. I believe that it does not. But even if it does, I believe that it should not. In 1932, Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis described the beauty of the 10th Amendment this way. He said, "A state may, if its citizens choose, serve as a laboratory and try novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country." That's exactly what states like Colorado and Oregon have done with legalization and what many more have done with aspects of it. They believe that the harm that might be done by easier access to this drug is outweighed by removing the violent underground economy that's caused by prohibition. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but I'd like to find out, and their experiment will inform the rest of the country. Now, the federal government has a legitimate authority to protect neighboring states by forbidding transport across state lines, which this amendment protects. But at the same time, it protects the right of a state's citizens to make this decision within their own boundaries. It's not necessary to become embroiled in the debate over marijuana. These states are having that debate and establishing their laws. The question is over the right of their people to have these debates, to make these decisions, and for the rest of the nation to observe and benefit from the outcome for good or ill. I reserve the balance.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
Mr. Chairman, I stand in opposition.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana.
Thank you. I yield myself 2 minutes and reserve the rest. My friend, Mr. McClintock, makes the point that, this should be an experiment within the states, and certainly that's something that has been a long-held goal and value. But we already have that ongoing. Today, Colorado, as everyone knows, has legalization of marijuana, notwithstanding what's going on with the federal government, its laws. And the information is rolling in, and the information is bad. The black market is worse than ever when it comes to drugs. Interstate commerce has increased, not decreased. Again, as I stated before, 2 states, Oklahoma and Nebraska, are now suing Colorado over the bleed over of problems that are occurring. The strength of marijuana is much stronger today in Colorado than it's ever been. The problems are much worse. We're actually seeing related deaths, accidents, and we've even have an overdose death now with the stronger forms of marijuana. But look, if this is about doctors allowing doctors to work with their patients, let's admit it. We don't allow, as a society, doctors to just do anything with any patient. We do have some guidelines and restrictions. Furthermore, children are the end result of bad decisions in all of this. We know that the more it's in the homes, the more it's going to get into the brains and the bloodstream of children. And again, I'll mention the number of problems that are developing from it are growing, mostly from what we're seeing in Colorado. Studies show that MRI scans show, even in casual users, profound brain changes. We see that the area that deals with ambition is being greatly affected. Thus, the ambition killer knowledge that we have and understanding about this drug. IQ, studies show a lowering of IQ.
Time has expired. Does he wish to yield himself more time?
I wish to yield back, I wish to reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves.
Yes.
The gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the co-sponsor of this amendment, my colleague, Mr. Polis of Colorado.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I thank the gentleman from California for bringing forward this amendment. And I say to my friend, the gentleman from Louisiana, I'm actually from Colorado, and I don't recognize the Colorado that you're talking about. I come from the Colorado where underage marijuana use is down since legalization. I'm from the Colorado where we have driven criminal cartels that seek to prey on our children every day out of business. I'm from Colorado where our violent crime rates are down and where we continue to regulate dispensaries to make sure they're not schools. And rather than have a corner street dealer who doesn't care if they're selling to a 14-year-old, we move that away and regulate it in a way to make sure the minors don't have access to marijuana. That's the Colorado that I'm from. I welcome you to come visit. Welcome you to come visit. But you know what? I don't have to convince you. I don't have to convince the state of Louisiana that they should do anything. And I just wish that you would leave my sovereign state of Colorado alone. Let our people and our state government decide what we want to do with regard to marijuana, rather than the federal agents going around trying to arrest people for doing activities that are fully legal under state law. That's all I ask. I'm not going to send federal troops into Louisiana to arrest people from whatever you do down there, smoking crayfish. You want me to ban that and send federal troops down there? I bet maybe smoking crayfish ain't good for you. I don't know. What if it's fried? Might clog your arteries, huh? But that's not good for you. You want me to send federal troops down there? Is that what you want me? Do you want me to send federal troops to Louisiana to stop you from eating fried crayfish?
Is the gentleman yielding?
Yeah, I'd like your answer.
The gentleman will suspend, and all members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Louisiana if he wants us to send federal troops to Louisiana to stop them from eating fried crayfish.
The gentleman
and I'm happy
may
to yield for an
yield.
answer.
If the gentleman is yielding to me, I would point out that the Colorado he describes does not
Reclaiming
exist.
my time. I am from Colorado. I know Colorado inside and out. And we have been tremendously successful in reducing the abuse of marijuana among minors. But again, it shouldn't be up to us to convince him, just as I don't have to eat their darn fried crayfish. I don't want it. I don't want it. So get the federal law enforcement apparatus to leave our state alone. That's all this amendment does, is respect the sovereign will of the people of my great state of Colorado to have innovative policies to reduce the abuse of
Gentleman will
marijuana.
suspend. The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from California controls
Reserve
the
the
time.
balance. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Louisiana.
How much time do I have left?
The gentleman from Louisiana has 3 minutes. The gentleman from California has 1 minute and a quarter.
Okay, I yield myself another minute and then reserve.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you. What we're finding out from Colorado, we're learning a lot of lessons. One is the way that marijuana is now getting into baked goods, gummy bears. There's a huge spike in emergency room visits, children who are overdosing on marijuana. No, if you actually read what the media says and what the studies show, is they're increasing problems in Colorado, not decreasing problems.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm sorry, but I can't yield.
The gentleman is inaccurate with regard to his characterization of my state.
The gentleman will suspend. It is the gentleman from Louisiana's time.
And back to the
parliamentary inquiry.
Does the gentleman from Louisiana yield for the parliament?
Does the gentleman from Louisiana yield
I
for a
do not
parliamentary
yield.
inquiry?
I do not
The
yield.
gentleman does not yield. The time is controlled by the gentleman from Louisiana.
back to the constitutionality. We may all have different opinions about this, but it's been settled in the Supreme Court. 2005, Gonzalez versus Raich, 6-3, says that the federal government does have a right to enforce drug policies, and for good reason, because we know that drugs cross state lines. It is an interstate commerce issue. And so what happens in one state affects the other states. But again, going back to the damage.
The gentleman's time has expired. Does he wish to yield himself more time?
I wish to reserve.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, the arguments we're hearing from Mr. Fleming are the arguments that ought to be heard in the states. I would remind him this measure does not affect marijuana laws involving any conceivable federal jurisdiction. It does not affect federal districts or territories. It does not affect federal jurisdiction over interstate commerce, including the federal government's responsibility to interdict transport among states. It does not affect the federal jurisdiction over federal land. It does not affect federal jurisdiction over the importation of marijuana from abroad. It only affects jurisdiction that is strictly and solely the rightful province of the states as pertains to their affairs strictly and solely within their own borders. At some point, Mr. Chairman, we must ask ourselves, do we believe in the 10th Amendment or do we not? Do we believe in federalism or do we not? Do we believe in the architecture of our Constitution or do we not? Do we believe in freedom or do we not? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Louisiana.
How much time do I have?
The gentleman from Louisiana has 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, and who has right to close?
The gentleman is the only time recognized.
Okay.
The gentleman from California yield back.
Thank you. Again, my good friend from California would suggest that really federal laws have no application, that we should just turn all laws and law enforcement over to the states. That simply isn't the case. And again, yes, the federal government does have jurisdiction. It's called the CSA, the Controlled Substances Act, and it's been around for a long time, and it's enforced by the DEA and many other agencies. So I would just say that the gentleman is just flat wrong on that, and that the Supreme Court came down on my side. Again, we can have different opinions, but that's where we are today. I would suggest that perhaps we get the Supreme Court to rule differently if we believe differently. But again, what's important to me is not the law. What is important to me is what's happening to the children of our nation, especially Colorado. Overdosages, brain changes, loss of IQ, memory loss, cognitive impairment. It also has, marijuana smoke has 4 times the tar of cigarette smoke. Who really believes that we're not going to see an epidemic down the road of lung cancer related to marijuana? As far as use for medical purposes, again, we don't have a single approved specific use of marijuana for medical purposes. And for heaven's sakes, we know that up to 17% of people who use it become addicted to it. So, you know, the first rule for us as physicians, and I've been a doctor for 40 years, is first do no harm. Well, we're doing a lot of harm with marijuana by legalizing it and liberalizing its use. With that, I yield back and urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
I'd ask for recorded vote.
The gentleman asks for a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California will be postponed. Seek recognition.